Welcome to the Stogie Geek Show, episode 102. This episode is sponsored by Mr. J's Havana Smoke Shop. They have an outstanding selection of premium handmade cigars. And by the Havana Cigar Club, a great place to enjoy a drink and a cigar. Stogie Geeks listeners can find a $5 off coupon on our website by clicking on the HCC logo. And by Debonair Cigars. Visit stogiegeeks.com/debonair for a list of retailers who carry Debonair. Buy some today and get a little more Debonair. And by Ocean State Cigars. Try the J. Grotto series cigar, including the Connecticut Shade Silk and limited edition J. Grotto Reserva lines. Visit them on the web at oceanstatecigars.com. Welcome, everyone, to the Stogie Geek Show. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian. This is the Broadleaf episode, apparently.
Oh, yes.
And coincidentally, we all picked up the same Broadleaf cigar. Sitting to my right is none other than Mr. Stogie Santa.
Good evening, everybody.
We gotta get you like a Santa hat, like a cigar
How you doing?
themed Santa
Fine.
hat.
Sure.
Would you be into that kind of thing?
Just let's move on, please.
Maybe some?
Where does the Santa name come from?
Because he is Stogie Santa.
Stogie Santa.
Stogie Santa. Yeah,
You get along with my father. He is. My name is Nicholas. He named me after Saint Nicholas Santa. So
there we
we
go.
get along.
Excellent.
There we go, Nick.
Nick Melillo is with us here tonight. Welcome, Nick.
How you doing, guys? Thanks for having me.
Good. On the lines via Skype also, we've got Mr. Will Cooper. Welcome, Will.
Hey, greetings, everybody.
Will, why don't you kind of Coop. Why don't you
I can't resist.
No one can. He's the coop.
He is. Well, you know what's funny? Almost every time we bring a guest on the show, right? You know, we'll kind of introduce ourselves, and then Will join, and they'll be like, "Coop! Oh my God, it's Coop!"
Yeah, but how come they go? Oh shit, Santa.
Yeah.
What's that all about? Okay.
Paul guy.
Okay.
So, Coop, why don't you set up the show for us tonight? Talk about what we're smoking, and then introduce our illustrious guest.
Sure thing. So, we titled this the Broadleaf episode, and we'll get into that in a second. But in terms of what I told everyone before the show is let's just pick a broadleaf of choice. And we happen to all just pick the same cigar. And the cigar we picked is the J. Grotto Anniversary cigar by Ocean State Cigars. So if you're a Stogie Geeks listener, you know of this cigar. We've been talking about it for a while. It's the fourth line by Paul Doyle's Ocean State Cigars, and it's his first Connecticut broadleaf. And it's also the first collaboration he's done with Debonair Cigars, Mr. Phil Zengi. And if you get Stogie Geeks listening, you know about that as well. Actually, I just reviewed this cigar today and been smoking them this week. It's a Connecticut broadleaf wrapper with a Dominican Habano binder. It's got a filler of what Paul is saying right now is Dominican and other Central American tobaccos right now. I am smoking, I believe Stogie Santa's smoking the L458, the 4x58 short Robusto. Paul, are you smoking that as well?
No, I'm smoking the larger Robusto size.
Okay, so are you smoking the 60 or the 50?
No, he's
50.
No, it's
okay, so you're smoking the Toro.
No, you're smoking the same thing, you dumb shit.
That's not a 48.
58.
Oh, 50. I thought he said 48.
Oh.
He goes, no way.
I'm
that's
the
40.
old guy. I'm old, right? You're young.
I've been drinking. That's my excuse.
Anyway, let's get this thing going.
Right. So, and I picked Broadleaf because our guest tonight, Nicholas Melillo, he's got a reputation. Hey, he was called, I believe, the chief of the Broadleafs at one point, or maybe he still is called that. So,
That's still the case.
He's very much known for his association with Broadleaf tobacco. And we'll get into this in a little more detail in this conversation. So, Nicholas, it's the Stogie Geeks here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you guys very much for having me. It's a pleasure. I have to. I know Phil Zengi, great guy. So I'm familiar Not familiar with the smoke that you're smoking right now, but I am familiar with the wrapper that Phil is using on that cigar.
Excellent.
Definitely.
Yeah, this is not officially released yet.
No, this is the third tweak that we did. So
I asked.
happy.
I actually asked Paul for one personally. I'm like, hey, can I try it now? He's like, yes,
Yeah.
try it now. So we just happen to have the luxury of.
we haven't had the Paul syndrome yet. So
No, it's smoking fantastic. It's
so
very good.
if you need a quality control, if your cigar has a flaw at all, just give it to Paul. He'll find it, or it will find him.
knock on wood. I've had really good luck lately.
What's that? One cigar in a row?
Well,
Two?
aside from the one that I had in the boat, but that was completely my fault, and I'll tell that story in the next segment. So stay tuned
Okay.
to hear about
Oh, I
a
can't
new
wait.
variation on Paul's syndrome. Ridiculous. So,
Anyway.
Nick, tell us how you got started in the cigar industry.
How I got started. I'm from Connecticut, born in New Haven. So New Haven has a very rich heritage of cigar factories. My grandfather worked in the Winchester factory after World War II, and he would frequent the F.D. Grave factory. A lot of great Connecticut broadleaf brands back in the day. So I became a cigar nerd very early on through the end of my high school. And I started working for a great shop called the Calabash Shop in Hamden, Connecticut, which was owned by two amazing women, Carol Velarde and Mary Russo, God rest her soul. And they gave me my first opportunity to run the Calabash. That year, they just came back from then the RTDA show, and it was the height of the cigar boom in 1996. And they gave me 2 bags of cigars, almost garbage bags of cigars, and they put me in charge of smoking and bringing on new brands to the store. So that was really my first start in the business. And that year, I also started going to Quinnipiac University. So I would work in the store. When I was not in class, I was running the store. So that was the beginning of it. Not too long into my first year, I met a gentleman by the name of Rick Ardito, who is now working for Kurt. Rick was working for a company called Drew Estate, and he brought in a cigar. At that time, it was called Samaro. I believe it was a cigar that these guys were having made I think in New York at the time. It was a Connecticut shade cigar. And I used to have a little filing cabinet that I would rate all of my cigars. And I was at class one day, and Rick came in, and they checked the filing cabinet to see how I liked the cigar, and I gave it a 1 out of 10. So we didn't bring that one into the store. But Rick kept coming back, and he came back with another cigar called La Vieja Habana, which was being made for Drew Estate by Nick Perdomo at the time. And soon after that, I think it was 1997, we did an event in the Calabash, and we did in-walked Jonathan Drew. And that was the first time I met Jonathan. And we kept in touch from 97 to about 2002. And at that time, I was traveling around the world. And John, he was getting emails from me in Vietnam and Laos and India, and invited me down to see if I wanted to come and work in Nicaragua.
Very cool.
So that was the beginning.
So, Nick, it's interesting. Your cigar history is very much rooted in Connecticut. Kind of recap for our listeners. When you say Connecticut shade, what does that mean?
Connecticut shade was a seed that was brought to Connecticut in the early 1900s. They say it was actually a variety of a Sumatra seed originally. This seed was grown in the Connecticut Valley under cheesecloth tents. It was done so the light would filter through the sunlight, and it would produce a very silky golden wrapper leaf. And, you know, if you grew it in direct sunlight, you would have completely different results. You'd have a much thicker leaf, a much veinier leaf. So this seed was grown under shaded tents and grown very successfully throughout the 1900s, still is grown in the valley. But towards the late 80s, early 90s, this seed was brought down to Ecuador. Ecuador, if you haven't been, is cloudy constantly during rainy season. So the clouds, we're not talking about beautiful, big, puffy clouds. They're these hazy clouds, and it's constant, pretty much all day except for about 4 o'clock. I think the sun peeks through a little bit. So these clouds provide a natural shade. So the sun filters through these clouds and produces a beautiful, silky, golden wrapper also. So they've become very successful in growing Connecticut shade. A lot of the cigars on the market today are Connecticut seed from Ecuador, but there's still a great co-op, Connecticut Shade Co-op, which is a group of farmers in the Connecticut Valley, and they grow Connecticut shade and they sort in the Dominican Republic. So it's all shipped from Connecticut down to the Dominican, sorted and then sold to factories throughout Central America, Dominican.
Now, when I think of Connecticut, I mean, we live here in New England, we're in Rhode Island, and we know that the winters are kind of long here. Is the growing season shorter in Connecticut, or is it pretty much like the same it would be as in Latin America, or?
You have a gap. You have a short time. You have pretty much the seed beds start in April, late April, May, and your growing season is until the end of August, the beginning of September. It's been very difficult in the valley over the past 6 years. There's been a lot of rain. There's been a lot of hail. For example, last June was one of the rainiest Junes in Connecticut in the past, I think it's been 100 years. There was hailstorms. There was a tornado that ripped through and struck a lot of the Connecticut shade crops last year. So, you have a short period, and, the past 6 years, the weather's been kind of difficult. So, it's definitely, that's also plagued Connecticut throughout the years. And sort of lowered the acreage. I think in the height, in the 50s, there was probably about 40,000 acres being grown in the Connecticut Valley. That number is probably down to about 6,000, but you definitely see a new popularity in a lot of the broadleaf wrappers and also Connecticut shade.
So you mentioned broadleaf. So kind of back up for our listeners, what is Connecticut broadleaf?
Broadleaf is classified in the valley as type 51 tobacco. The Habano seed is classified as type 52 tobacco. That's where this T52 comes from. So broadleaf is actually one of the 5 original primary seed strands from which all the seed strands come from for black tobaccos, for cigar tobaccos. So broadleaf, is been grown in this area before any European arrived on the scene. I think it was, roughly around the early 1600s. There was a Dutch explorer, Adrian Block, which Block Island is named after, and he was trading up and down the Connecticut River. So he encountered tobacco very early on. So the indigenous people here, had all been using this leaf for a long time. Connecticut is a Mohawk word which means land of the long tidal river, and that's pretty much the key to broadleaf, and it can't be replicated anywhere else in Pennsylvania, anywhere in the world. It's the soil, it's the sandy loam soil that was produced because of this Connecticut River, which basically starts in Canada, splits Vermont and New Hampshire, cuts through Massachusetts into Connecticut, then into Old Saybrook, into the Long Island Sound. So this river left perfect meadows for growing black tobaccos. And broadleaf is just an amazing, naturally sweet, earthy tobacco. I'm biased, but it's definitely one of my favorites. And that combined with Nicaraguan filler tobaccos, flavor country.
So are people growing broadleaf primarily in Connecticut, and can you take that and grow it in another country as well?
You could. It's being grown in the valley as we speak. I think this same seed variety has been grown in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. There's something called Pennsylvania broadleaf, which is also a fantastic tobacco. It's definitely has different characteristics. because of the area in which it's grown. It's just different from the Connecticut Valley. When that glacier receded 10,000 years ago, it left these perfect meadows for growing specifically this seed variety, which was native to that area. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
So I think that kind of answers the question of how you earned the name Chief of the Broadleaf.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely the indigenous culture always fascinates me, and the culture of using tobacco, for many thousands of years. We don't even know to the extent that it was used. But yeah, Chief of the Broadleafs just sort of Chief of the Broadleafs is actually a name that was made as a cigar called Black Hawk, and it is actually still being made in small numbers by a company in Indiana called National Cigar. They make machine-made but long-filled broadleaf cigars. They made cigars known as Farnham Drive. I don't know if you guys ever heard of Farnham Drive, Evermore. These are all old Connecticut brands from back in the day, but they still are in existence, and they're definitely facing a dark future with all this FDA regulation going on, because it could potentially be devastating for them.
So Nick, at some point you did go to work for Drew Estate.
Yes.
Recap some of your experiences there. Start with kind of early on.
Well, you want to hear how I got there before?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I graduated with an international business degree and a minor in sociology. I left in 2000. My dream was always to travel, so I worked for the Vatican in the year 2000. It was the Grand Jubilee. There was a lot of pilgrims coming from all over the world. I worked there for about a year, lived in Italy, backpacked around, went back to work on my master's, and I was working on my master's for about a year, and then I was offered a job working with an Italian Renaissance art history tour, which took high school kids around Europe, Italy specifically, Siena, Florence to Rome. So I decided while I was over there, I wasn't going to continue my master's degree. I said, I'm there, let me continue traveling. So I bought an around the world ticket, and I went from Italy to Spain to France to India to Thailand, Thailand overland down the Mekong River through Laos into Vietnam, China, and then Japan. When I was in Japan, Jonathan had been in my email list the whole time. So he's getting emails of me emerging from the jungle, and at 2003 it wasn't really as popular as it is right now to travel to Nicaragua. So Jonathan sent me an email, give me a call. It was a one-line email. Give me a call. I obviously have some serious what to talk about. And I called him up, and he said, I want you to come work for me in Nicaragua. I want you to be my right-hand man. So I was about a month in the States after being around the world for a year, and I traveled down to Nicaragua in March of 2003. And I was down there for about a week, and Jonathan said, do you want the job? I said, most definitely. I had planned on traveling to Central America before I had been talking to Jonathan. It was my dream to learn how to bunch cigars and learn the production end of the cigar business. So the stars aligned, and about a week in, John said, all right, I got to go. And I said, what do you mean? Where are you going? He said, you'll figure out what needs to get done. So at that time, Drew Estate, it was about 8 months after I came on. Drew Estate was plagued. They actually had to shut down the factory. They had a serious issue with draw problems. John was out promoting, and the production guy on the floor just made some horrible mistakes packing the cigars with too much leaf. One of the quality control measures is weight of the cigars coming off the production floor. They were packing too many leaves into the cigars, and they basically made them unsmokable. So John had to shut down the factory and then regroup. So, he was looking for somebody that he trusted and could be his eyes and ears in Nicaragua. So March 2003, I started learning, everything was Drew Estate was doing at the time. I think they were producing around 8,000 cigars a day at that time. So I started immersing myself, learning the production process, learning what they were doing in shipping, and then slowly but surely started implementing changes and quality control filters to ensure that these problems would never happen again. Production sheets, shipment sheets, planning, and I started blending. I was never an infused cigar smoker, but definitely have respected the products from a store standpoint. And everybody, who am I to tell people what they like? This is all about enjoying what you like. So I actually started blending almost the first 6 months. The first cigar I blended was actually an infused product. But on the side, I was always blending cigars, learning how to bunch. I started learning how to bunch almost initially being down there. And I started blending cigars that, I wanted to smoke. And I had a number of blends that were going at the time. We had some great wrapper from Ecuador. It was a Cameroon seed that was being grown, I believe, by the Oliva tobacco family at the time. It was 2,000 pounds and made some incredible blends. Unfortunately, that seed variety never came to fruition for them on a market level. And so just continued blending cigars. In 2005, 2006, my dream came true, and we started working with Broadleaf. Mm-hmm. So we were working on a number of actually a traditional cigar for a client at the time, and Steve Saka came on board just around that time. And Steve called me up and said, "Nick, can you send me something I can effing smoke?" Because Steve, of course, So this was the onset to Liga Privada. I had made up 10 blends, and I sent those 10 blends to the Miami office, and Steve and everybody that they were giving the cigars to were just a hit. Of course, specifically one blend in particular, which was the 9. But also, what a lot of people don't know is a lot of those original blends, the UF13, the JD4, all of those blends come from those original blends that I had made up initially for Steve. One of those 10 blends was for the customer that we were working with at the time that was looking for a traditional product, and the 9 blend eventually became Liga Privada number 9. And Steve did an amazing job branding and packaging that product. And we only had a little bit of broadleaf at the time, so it was, Steve's smoke, it was my smoke, Jonathan's smoke, until we could get it. We made things very difficult for ourselves because when I was blending a lot of those first blends, we were using the upper priming of this Connecticut broadleaf plant, the Ligero grade, okay? In a good growing year, there is not a lot of wrapper tobacco in general from the broadleaf plant. It's very veiny, and some of the leaves get very big. I don't know if you guys ever seen, I call them elephant ears. They are gigantic.
Correct.
So what happens is when they're growing in the fields, those leaves get so big they start to droop over, and this causes a lot of breakage, okay? So we were using the upper part of the plant, the smaller leaves, the thicker leaves, and that's what the original Liga Privada was blended with. And we never deviated from this because, you got to remember at that time, everybody thought Drew Estate couldn't make a traditional cigar. Mm-hmm. We had, there was very, very little confidence in the market at that time that, hey, these guys can make a traditional cigar. So once we came out with Liga, we were not going to compromise, still not going to compromise the blend or integrity of that brand.
Was that some of the root of some of the availability issues that we've seen with the Liga blend over time?
That is, yeah. I've been down to Nicaragua. This is really the first times I'm really getting into this end of the business. I've been strictly focused the last 11 years on everything Nicaragua. So I've definitely seen online and, controlling demand in this, but that 110% that is false from a tobacco standpoint. If you understand the Connecticut Valley and the leaves, there's a lot of broadleaf out there, but this particular upper priming, the Ligero grade, it's very scarce. And with rainy seasons for the past 6 years, it doesn't grow thick, Ligero grade tobaccos. It's sort of the opposite from the Connecticut shade where they're growing under clouds and the clouds helps. With Connecticut broadleaf, it's the opposite in what we've done with Liga. We're looking for thick tobacco, and to have thick, tasty broadleaf in the upper primings, you need sun. And rain doesn't help, clouds doesn't help. You need the sun. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Will, did you have more questions along these lines for Nick?
Yeah. So Nicholas, that's a really interesting point that you made. So, in other words, there's a lot of broadleaf, and I'll use broadleaf, but I'm sure there's other lines that fall into this category. Regular production, but suddenly you see consistency issues, and that just got my mind thinking. These obviously are some of the reasons where consistency issues can happen if you're not getting that same type of. I believe I've heard Jonathan call it texture of the leaf, correct?
Coop, say that last part. I lost you on the last part.
I believe Jonathan refers to that he referred to that to me as texture of the leaf when it gets thick like that.
Yeah, definitely. The texture is, it's as you move up the plant. Of course, the energy of that plant is growing towards the sun. So of course, the upper leaves are thicker on that plant, on the upper part of that plant, and that's what we used in blending this cigar. So Steve and I used to do a lot of blind taste testings because, of course, when this cigar hit, the Liga Privada hit, the first year, it didn't hit right away. It took a little time, and then it hit. And, of course, Miami's calling me, and they're saying, we need more Liga Privadas. These guys want more Liga Privadas. Myself was putting the throttle. I'm the one that told them no, and you're only getting this amount because – you could get lower priming tobaccos, but I would do blind tastings, and I could tell, using lower priming tobaccos that there is a change in flavor. So I wasn't willing to compromise that, and nobody, Jonathan or Steve, we didn't want to compromise that at all. So, you can make these adjustments and take some shortcuts along the way, but, they're definitely become noticeable. And we're not in the business of compromising blends,
Understood. Yeah, that's a really good point.
So the broadleaf is traditionally Maduro, goes through the Maduro process. What's the reasoning behind that? Is there other kinds of broadleaf that maybe don't go through the Maduro process, or does it just benefit from that process?
Yeah, you can get broadleaf Claro, definitely. Claro, Colorado Claro. You can get all different shade varieties. It doesn't just have to be Maduro. Specifically for what we're using it, because it's a thicker tobacco and the higher primings, it goes through a tremendous amount of fermentation. So the time in the bulks, I used to smoke, Connecticut cigars. There was always Connecticut cigars made locally in New Haven. They always used to have, extra claro, oscuro, Maduro, oscuro, and extra oscuro. Even, back in the 90s, one of my favorite smokes was the Hoya de Monterrey Rothschild. This was 90s. This was 96 when Frankie Ianessa was very involved. Frankie Ianessa, if you guys don't know him, he's definitely, I didn't know him that well, but my idol as far as broadleaf is concerned. He did amazing things with this leaf, and he made these Hoya de Monterrey Rothschilds. They came without bands, no cello, 50 count wheels, just incredible. But there was always Claro. You can get Maduro, extra oscuro. So yeah, broadleaf, you don't necessarily have to have Maduro. It depends on what you're using, what kind of fermentation you put the leaf through. But definitely when you're dealing with the upper primings, the heavier tobacco, after 2 years fermentation, year and a half, it's gonna darken up really dark. It starts off beautiful. Some of it has almost like a rosado, tone to it. This beautiful reddish hue, and coming out of the fields, it's just sweet. I mean, when you smell raw Connecticut broadleaf tobacco in its raw stage, I mean, there's nothing like it. And in its final stages, it's just got this incredible natural sweetness that's unprecedented.
When you were blending cigars for Drew Estate, did you ever? I'm sure there were times where there was some disagreements about, should this be the next blend? Were there ones that you liked better than other people, and kind of how did you resolve those issues?
Yeah, definitely people had different opinions. For 9, it was pretty unanimous. Hands down, everybody that we gave that blend to. For me, it stood out. Steve, it stood out. Steve started chain smoking them after the first batch, and same with the rest of the guys. That was unanimous. But there is definitely times where people have different opinions. There have been cases where I would have went with something different. But Rustica, for example, I ended up changing Rustica at the last second about a year ago. There was just one leaf in there that I wanted to change out. So at that time, I got to handle that project, so I made a change. But yeah, definitely, there's some cases, but for the most part, it's pretty unanimous. On a lot of the blends.
Well, go ahead, Mark.
No, I find about Liga, I mean, besides the taste of the cigar, including Nika, is your combustion rate compared to other cigars, the burning of that. It just seems it's incredible. It truly is. And the second question I got, a lot of people look at Connecticut broadleaf as a wrapper. Also, that's you're not going to use the higher primings on it, but you also use that for a filler, and I think that's overlooked a lot. Do you agree with that, Nick?
Yeah, it's definitely it's been used as filler for many years. Binder has been a very popular binder for a long time, and traditionally, really, it's more of a binder grade tobacco in the sense that it's grown in the sun. It's not as thin as a lot of these other wrapper tobaccos. Like when you look at Connecticut Shade, when you look at the Habano Ecuador, if you look at Indonesia. So it's traditionally the yields, and that's why it's not really favorable for a lot of manufacturers, because the yields, where you can get maybe 4 to 5 pounds of Connecticut Shade is going to make you 1,000 cigars. Depending on what you're using for broadleaf, it could run upwards to 25, 30 pounds makes you that same 1,000 cigars. So that makes it very difficult for people. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people are using it as filler tobaccos, have used it as filler tobaccos to get that broadleaf sweetness and that earthiness that you can't get from other tobaccos.
Unmistakable.
Yeah.
So Nick, as far as your personal taste go, was the Liga blend some of your favorites, or did you have other ones that you like to smoke?
Liga's definitely top. Like I said, the UF13 came. I also blended, came from that batch. Dirty Rat, that came. Was my smoke around the factory, because I was smoking so many 6x52s and larger ring gauge. Traditionally, I'm a 6x52. That's my size, but over time, I sort of started gravitating towards Corona size 46 ring gauge. So yeah, there's a lot of blends. I'm not just stuck in the box of broadleaf. I mean, I enjoy every tobacco out there. I mean, I enjoy Habano Ecuador. I enjoy San Andreas Negro. I've worked on a lot of blends using incredible tobaccos from all over the world. But broadleaf is special to me.
Nick, and I'm not just saying this because you're on the show, right? But I really love the UF13. What was special and unique about that blend?
The UF13, we just used. I ended up kicking the blend up. There's a particular Ligero tobacco from Esteli in there. Excuse me. That is, it's incredible. So I ended up kicking that Ligero up in that blend, and that really changed the dynamics of the blend and provided for a little bit more of that oomph and strength. And we ended up I ended up coming up with the finishing of the head. I said, well, we did the flying pig, and we did the dirty rat with the fishtail. So I wanted to do something special, and we combined the two, and I think the product came out incredible.
A product that I really enjoy. It's not as strong as like a regular Liger. Was the A version. I tell you, the flavor of that A, I really enjoyed.
I don't think
That's
I've had
incredible.
it.
That's incredible. And by the way, Mr. Zangi said to say hello to you.
Zangi!
Yeah, he's listening to us as we speak. But,
Zangi.
What
up, Zangi? I love Zangi. Zangi's my man.
Oh, he's my brother.
Zangi and I have a lot to, relate on because Phil did, we can relate in these experiences because Phil did and moved down to Honduras and was living in Honduras. So I love Phil. Yeah.
Don't we
He's
all?
doing some great work, man. That first degree, I can't get enough of that cigar.
Isn't that something?
Great cigar.
Oh, man.
Now, when you
man.
said you liked you gravitate to the 652, is that because you can use a little bit more tobacco in that cigar to get the flavors that you want, Nick?
Usually when I'm blending, I'll start with 6x52 because I feel it's just a nice size. It's in between. It's not too big in the ring gauge. It's not too small. It's it's right there in the middle, in my opinion. And I think it's a good ring gauge to really experiment with the blends. And from there you can really take blends a lot of different directions based on what leaves you use based on the ring gauge. For example, the Dirty Rat, you could go a couple different directions. You can switch out one of the Vizos. You can add more of the Viso. You can add more of the Ligero. So, you can take things a little bit differently. I don't know if you guys have you smoked any of the Liga Privada Robustos?
Oh, yes.
Any of you guys smoked?
Oh,
the
yeah,
Liga
absolutely.
Yeah, I like it in the
Robustos before?
Robusto size a lot.
So
actually.
I don't know if you notice sometimes on that smoke, it starts off a little bit more powerful and spicy sometimes because of the shortness of the size. So you're dealing with the longer leaves. So when they break those leaves off to fill the bunch, where you put those tobaccos completely changes the blend.
Absolutely.
So in that Robusto blend, there's a little bit more of the Viso Ligero, towards the foot of that cigar, which gives it a little bit more kick to start off.
Nick, Zedman from our chat has a question, and it's a really good one. What was the difference between the UF13 original release and the UF13 Dark that was released later?
We were working with this Habano seed wrapper from Connecticut. Okay, this was a seed that was brought to Connecticut in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Connecticut has a very old relationship with Cuba. Cuba would send filler tobaccos to Connecticut, and Connecticut would send wrapper tobaccos. Okay, so back in 2006, it was up in the fields. One of the farmers we were dealing with was growing about 2,000 pounds of this Habano seed. Throughout the 1900s, it sort of lost favor. Broadleaf and Connecticut Shade sort of took over. And I understand why now. It's a very difficult tobacco to ferment, even more than broadleaf. So at the time we were working with UF13, it was using the Habano seed. Since there was a lot of fermentation piles that we thought were going to be ready and were just not ready, and we really didn't know exactly when they were going to be ready. It's not like any other tobacco I've really seen. You could sort of get the general idea when it's going to be finished in the fermentation piles, but like any tobacco speaks, and it's ready when it's ready. So we ended up switching from the Habano seed to broadleaf. So the UF13 Dark, it ended originally they were Habano seed from Connecticut, and it became broadleaf because we could supply the market better with the broadleaf.
A question from the chat.
Compared to, it's crazy.
Oh, sorry, Nick. Another question from the chat is, Tell us about the weather differences between Cuba and Nicaragua and the result on the Seco Viso and the Hero leaves.
Okay, it's very difficult for me to answer this question with 100% accuracy because I don't have experience working with Cuban tobacco in its raw form, unfortunately. I'm dying to get my hands on some tobacco. But if you look at just general their classifications, what I see how they classify, they usually classify volado, which is the bottom primings, then seco, and then ligero, I believe. Okay? Whereas in Nicaragua, it's seco, viso, ligero. From what I gather, I've started smoking more and more Cubans. There's definitely similar climates, but Nicaragua has a very rich volcanic soil. Nicaragua is the area of some of the most active, I think the most active volcanoes in Central America. Okay, this has a tremendous effect on the tobacco and also the sun and growing season. So from what I gather, Nicaragua is very diverse in its strength levels, moving from the bottom primings to the top primings. So the lower primings, the lower part of the plant in strength level becomes very diverse and much stronger as you move up the plant. I don't get that sense from Cuba as much. I don't think that the diversity in strength levels between the bottom and top primings are as great as Nicaragua. I can speak to it from the Dominican and experience with Dominican tobacco. It's similar. The Dominican plants, if you take a ligero from the Dominican, it's really strength-wise like a viso from Nicaragua. This is not absolute truth, but in general, this is my finding. So
basically, it comes down to what you're saying is the soil.
Definitely soil, and also again the growing standards. Nicaragua has really come a long way, and you got to remember these amazing Cuban families that left Cuba after Castro took over and moved to places like Nicaragua, Honduras. The standards and the quality levels have just improved tremendously throughout the years, and especially in Nicaragua. Nicaragua was plagued with a hurricane in 1998. After going through war since the late 70s and 80s, so it really hasn't been since after 1998 that Nicaragua has been able to hit its stride, and its farming practices. What a lot of these families are doing in the fields with growing this tobacco is just incredible. The quality control standards, the seed varieties, the care that's taken in the fields, the classification, the fermentation. It's again, I don't know because I haven't seen Cuba, but I've definitely been smoking products here and there, and for me, I'll smoke a Cuban cigar from the same box, and one cigar will smoke phenomenal, and then the next cigar completely different. From phenomenal, full flavored to, just bland, not burning properly. It doesn't seem like the tobacco is well fermented. So that's my experience.
What I'm amazed about is I have a strong background in quality control. And what third world countries and some of these farms, what they use is incredible. What they bring in the quality controls from the fields, not just so much inside the rolling and the deveining pot and everything like that, but in the fields and how they make the yields get better and better, and what they use is incredible. It truly is. From farm to farm that I've been on,
it is.
It's incredible. It really is what they use.
So Nick, you mentioned you've been smoking some Cuban cigars lately. What are your favorite Cuban cigars?
My favorite tends to be consistently. I tend to lean towards the Monte Cristo number 4s. For some reason, I've just had the best luck with the Monte Cristo number 4s, and to my understanding, that's one of the better selling sizes. I know, from living in Rome, that was my staple smoke constantly, and it was definitely readily available. I've been smoking from time to time some Romeo and Juliet tubos. I can't recall the number. I think it's the number one is a Corona size. Um, but I'm just starting. I haven't smoked many Cubans at all over the past 11. Not a lot of cigars over the past 11 years. So just in the past 6 months to 8 months, I've really started to, smoking more Cubans. But I smoked some Punch, I believe they were.
Yep.
Someone gifted me, and man, when they were smoking well, they were smoking phenomenal. But it definitely had some quality control issues, and the blend seemed to be not too consistent at times.
So, Nick, tell us a little bit about Melillo International.
Melillo International was set up. So my contract with Drew Estate was coming up. By this past October, I had to make a decision whether to sign or not. I decided in September I wasn't going to renew my contract. My contract ended as of January 1st of this year. So the guys at Drew Estate asked me to stay on, of course, and help with the transition. And so I formed this company to help make a transition, and just been Melillo International has been just helping people right now on a consulting basis, people that are dealing in the factory. I deal with the production planning, with the shipment planning, with the yields from the factory level. So I've been dealing with a few clients. To be honest with you, I've been sort of taking a little bit of time and not really working with a lot of people right now. I decided to take a little time off and spend time with my family, since this is the longest I've been in the United States in 11 years. So I've decided to take a little bit of time and spend time with my family. I've been basically testing blends for people and basically consulting remotely right now, because I know when I get back into the swing of things full steam ahead, it's going to be nonstop. So it's a consulting company, and I've just been consulting with different people that need help, with guys that are working on brands, from guys that are working, own factories and need help from curing broadleaf, making blends, help with yields, organization, things of that nature.
Nick, does it also involve, I think I read it was tobacco purchasing as well, right?
Correct, yeah, definitely tobacco purchasing. I've been responsible for purchasing tobacco for Drew Estate since almost 2004, 2005. So, these guys made, when I first got to Drew Estate, we were air shipping bales, all over the world. And finally, we started investing heavily in tobacco. And that's definitely, I think, one of the major reasons for our success over the years. Drew Estate has some of the most incredible tobaccos and diverse tobaccos from all over the world. So yeah, I've definitely been helping with people. I have great relationships with amazing, growers and tobacco dealers throughout the world. So definitely cool.
Very cool.
So let me ask you a question, Nick.
Sure.
Are there plans eventually to possibly you produce your own cigar? Is that something you're thinking about on the horizon?
I'm definitely thinking about it, Coop. I'm definitely taking a deep breath, really, at this point, and definitely thinking about it. I definitely have a number of opportunities, incredible opportunities that have been coming my way, from collaborating on blends to doing, everything myself from A to Z. So I think with a little bit more time, I'll definitely focus on making a blend and brands. I'm definitely very passionate about creating an art also, and Drew Estate guys have some incredible artists that have been working for them. So I've had some ideas and haven't really been able to express myself. Nica Rustica was the first project that I really got to work with this gentleman named Joey Reichenbach, who is sort of the unseen face at Drew Estate, the creative face in the Miami office. He's been working for Drew Estate since I believe 2000. He's just an incredible artist. So it was a pleasure to work with him on Nica Rustica about a year ago. So I'm definitely excited about the potential of creating a brand and not only really expressing myself through blending, but also I want that to be reflective in developing strong brand that really, I can identify with and express myself. So yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
So you're not coming up with your own blend for this year's IPCPR, but maybe next year.
No, potentially next year. Yeah, I really just have been taking in everything day by day right now. Definitely not for this year. I will be at the IPCPR show. I'm looking forward to being able to, walk around and see what everybody's doing and spend some time in different people's booths and smoke some great cigars and spend time with great people.
You're going to schmooze, basically.
I'm going to schmooze. I'm going to schmooze. I haven't done a lot of schmoozing over the past 11 years, so yeah, definitely.
Well, as a consultant, you gotta schmooze, man. That's part of it.
Yep.
Yeah, you either schmooze or you lose.
That's
That's
right.
it.
No, that's it. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Oh, the king of schmooze.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Will, Mark, did you have any final questions for Nick?
No, I'm all set.
I think I'm all set too.
Nick, are you ready to play 5 questions with the Stogie Geeks?
Oh, I don't know, man. What's this 5 questions?
Okay, get ready.
Get ready. You can never truly
right.
be ready, so we're going to jump right into it. 3 words to describe yourself.
3 words to describe myself: passionate, loyal, jokester.
If you were a serial killer, what would be your weapon of choice?
Jesus. Serial killer. I'm going to say flamethrower.
Nice.
That's not really the great.
Burn it down.
If you wrote a book about yourself, what would the title be?
Let's see. I would say Connecticut Yankee and Esteli.
Nice.
In the popular game of Ask Grabby Grabby, do you prefer to go first or second?
First. First. Definitely first.
Pick 2 celebrities to be your parents.
Okay. Parents, huh? I'm going to go with Alicia Keys and Will Ferrell.
I like the Will Ferrell. Nice.
I can
I
see
like
the
it.
Will Ferrell
I like it.
personality.
I like it. Very cool. Nick, thank you so much for appearing on the Stogie Geek Show. It was wonderful talking with you.
That was
Guys,
great.
thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Best
I
of
hope
luck in
to,
your endeavors, and I'm told that Stogie Santa and Will both will buy you a drink at IPCPR.
That's
so
it.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right. I'll bring you some smokes then.
Oh,
There
that
you go.
sounds all right.
All right.
Good deal.
Looking
I
forward
hope
to it.
I hope to join you guys one day in the studio over there in Rhode Island.
Open invitation, my friend. Open invitation.
Anytime.
Come down
Absolutely.
anytime.
All right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just check with us. Make sure we're here on the Thursday night. We're usually broadcasting on Thursday nights from 9 to 11. So
All right. Can I send out one shout out?
absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's not really a shout out. It's just I want to say we lost a good friend and coworker, Drew Estate, last week. His name was Pedro De Brito. Amazing man. He worked for Drew Estate since 2000, and he was an incredible soccer player for the University of Connecticut. All-time leading scorer, Rookie of the Year. I believe he was given the Rookie of the Year award by Pele, and I just want to send a shout out to him. God rest his soul.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, bud.
All right, guys.
Nick, thank you again for appearing on the show. We hope to have you here in studio someday. And with that, we're going to take a short break, come back, and talk about our Stogies of the Week.
Ciao for now.
All right.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank you,
ciao.
Nicholas.